Welcome to the College Football Preview Show. I'm your host, John Sarianides. As always, I'm joined by my partner, Ryan Barry. Ryan, how are you this evening?
Doing pretty well. It's been a long day, but it's a good day to talk football.
Well, after talking high school football for the past hour with Tyler and Mukala, now I'm ready to talk some college football here. So we're excited to be on with you. And as always, I do want to let you know that we are brought to you by Yolked. If you're looking for an effective, safe protein product that can help take your workouts to another level, then you need to visit yolk.com and see what they have to offer. At only 47 calories per pack, it's a delicious protein product that tastes like birthday cake. It goes down easy, and it helps you get bigger and stronger. If you're looking for a safe and effective product, then Yolked is that product for you. Made from real egg yolks. I think you'll really like it. I know I've used it in the past, and I highly recommend it. Again, visit yolk.com today for more information. All right, as always, we're going to start with our FBS programs here. Boston College losing a heartbreaker last week to Michigan State in overtime, 42-40. And Ryan, I got to be honest with you. I thought the Eagles were going to win this football game. And Dylan Lonergan played out of his mind. He was one of our college dudes of the week this week. He played out of his mind. He has been unbelievable through 2 weeks, by the way. You could see why now Bill O'Brien and the offensive staff chose him over Grayson James. And I thought Grayson James was not only good enough to start at Boston College, but I think Grayson's good enough to start for a lot of people. But you could see why they picked Dylan Lonergan. And I think the reason why they picked him ultimately is his ability to manage the offense and play more from the pocket. We saw it firsthand on Saturday night. Now, as well as Lonergan played, this is a tough loss for Boston College. You win this game, and it really, truly changes the trajectory of your season.
Yeah, and I think it was exciting. I felt confident picking them last week just because, and I'm glad. Yeah, and I'm glad that it came to fruition that it was a close game. It's like they got blown out. And again, we always talk on the show about no moral victories. But in a lot of ways, to go there and to be within 1 point is good. But it really would have been a staple of the season, similar to how it would have felt last year. I mean, you know that you have a quarterback. You're walking away with that, right? But you do have some questions on defense for as high-scoring a game
that
as
secondary was not what we thought they were, at least not against a quality opponent.
Right, and I think that's if anything what I'm thinking a little bit more so as a BC fan is that, dang, like because last year, I think it was maybe a 20-point game or something like that, for the defense allowed. I can't remember. It wasn't a super high-scoring game last year, but this year to be as high-scoring as it was and to think, is this a sign of what's to come this year when we get into ACC play is, I think, a little tricky. But, you've got the quarterback in Lonergan, and that's what's really exciting.
Yeah, and again, I think when you look at what he's done the first 2 weeks against Fordham, against Michigan State, and he hasn't played a lot of football, and he still has 3 years of eligibility. So if you're a Boston College fan, yes, it sucks losing this game, a game you should have won. I mean, they certainly played well enough to win it, especially in the first half. You can debate that in the second half, but I think if you're a Boston College fan, you've got to be really pleased with what you saw out of Dylan Lonergan. You have a quarterback. So now it's a matter of, can you build around this quarterback? Because he's going to stay here. I'd be surprised if he hits the portal. Only way he hits the portal is if he falls apart, gets benched, and then decides to leave after the season. I think he's going to stick around here because I think Bill O'Brien's going to stick around here. And so with that being the case, the quarterback position, as long as Lonergan continues to play at this level, it's on lockdown here for a while. It's more about what do you do around him and what do you do on defense. And look, the bottom line is you lost this game because you couldn't defend Nick Marsh and you couldn't tackle. Boston College was terrible tackling. So at the end of the day, that's what cost you the game. Aiden Childs is talented, the Michigan State quarterback, but he can be wildly inconsistent. Bottom line is if you did a better job defending Marsh and you did a better job tackling, you win this football game. You're 2-0. You're feeling really good about yourself going out to the West Coast this weekend to take on a hapless Stanford team. Now all of a sudden, you have the potential to be 4-0 coming off a bye, and then you play Cal at home, another game you could win. You could potentially be 4-0 by the end of the month. Now, at best, you're 3-1, which is still pretty good, but it's a disappointing loss nonetheless. You know what? I'm going to save you the angst for about 5 minutes. We'll talk about the alma mater in about 5 minutes. UConn also lost a heartbreaker, losing in overtime to Syracuse 27-20. Of the three FBS games this weekend, Ryan, this is the one that I feel is truly the one that got away. UConn dominated that game for 3 quarters. They deserved better. They should have won the game. This is a disappointing loss because if you win this one, and I don't think Syracuse is as good as people think they are, but if you win this game, man, you're off and running now because when you look at the rest of that schedule, conceivably they could have won another, dare I say, 8 games and potentially had a 10-win season. Now it'll depend. You still have got some tough games here on the slate. But, man, this is a crushing loss for the Huskies.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, if you win this game, you rattle off a few more, and you're talking about a Huskies team that could be ranked in the top 25 at some point, right? If with the win like this. And I don't think, to your point, I don't think Syracuse is going to win more than 6-7 games this year. I think there's been too much turnover. But they are still an ACC school. They're still a very good, they're still a good program in general, considering where they were last year. But it's tough because I was watching this game on my laptop before the game on Saturday because obviously we had the weather delay, and I was rooting for them, and they looked good up until they collapsed at the end. And I will give them credit to set themselves up the way they did to force it to go to overtime. I thought was huge, right? Like to convert those big third and longs for that Joe Fagnano made, and like it said a lot about the Huskies that they were able to do that. So it's within them, but I think that Coach Moore was really pissed after the game. I don't know if he was so much mad at his team for giving up the lead or if it was the officiating, but it's one of those where you have a coach that cares so much, no matter.
It appears we've.
I'm pissed off about this, but it's in the wrong way. So.
Yeah, and look, I don't blame Coach Moore for being upset. I would be too. Your defense played well enough for 3 quarters for you to win the game. Your offense struggled, picked it up in the fourth quarter when they needed it down the stretch. Skylar Bell, once again, proving that he's one of the best receivers in college football, 11 catches, 105 yards. But this is a bad loss for this program. These are the games you need to win if you want to stake a claim that you belong in a conference. We all know what UConn basketball brings to the table in a conference move. But it's your football program that needs to prove itself from a consistency standpoint. You win this game, now you're showing the rest of the country that, hey, we can be a football school too. We can consistently be good in football as well. I just thought that this was a really disappointing loss. Is it a setback loss? No, because I think this team is still really good, and I think that this is a team that ultimately still wins 8 or 9 games and gets a quality bowl bid. But it's disappointing nonetheless because you only get so many opportunities to make a statement. This was one of those games. All right, you ready to talk about the alma mater now?
Oh, yeah, always.
You were there to watch Bryce Soley kick the Bryant Bulldogs to a 27-26 win. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I feel bad for UMass. I really do. And this is a hard one for me because we cover Bryant as well. So we have to be fair and balanced here. And I know you were getting some crap after the game for interviewing Coach Merritt and Zaheem Kollick. But at the end of the day, man, we cover them too. We have an obligation to that program as well. So you need to see where we're coming from. We're New England Football Journal. We know you have other great UMass options out there. We think our UMass coverage is just as good as those other options. But understand, we also have to cover the other program. From Bryant's standpoint, huge win. First win ever against an FBS opponent. Obviously, we know it's an important win. It illustrates that Chris Merritt is doing a fantastic job there. The investment that the school is making in the football program in terms of facilities is paying off. So from Bryant's perspective, they're off to a good start. They could have very easily beaten New Mexico State if they played better offensively. They played Bentley on Saturday. That'll be a tough game. Coach Scarpa will have the Falcons ready to play. But Bryant is poised to get off to a good start here. Huge win for them. My question to you is, Ryan, what does this loss mean for UMass? Because now, the next 2 weeks, you go on the road for Iowa and Missouri. What does this loss mean for them? How backbreaking of a loss is this really? Paint a picture for us as a UMass guy.
I picture it paints to me is you're looking at potentially an 0-12 season. And I don't say that lightly, just in the sense that, it's like you're trying to be dramatic. I look at the schedule, and you have Akron, you have Kent State, two teams that are obviously not strong in the MAC. But it's hard not to think that if you're struggling to hold leads, if you're struggling to, and I feel bad because I'm saying this with Bryant is a very good program, and I think that they did not get enough credit coming into this week or last week from UMass fans, from people like, they kept saying we lost to Bryant, they were 2-10, blah blah blah. Like you heard a lot of that, but it's tough because they have been a solid
Meyer's a really good quarterback.
Yeah,
Brennan Meyer kid, and Chris Merritt has done a great job in recent years of developing quarterbacks. So
right. I mean, they went 2-10 last year, but I don't think people get that there was a lot of roster turnover. You lose Zevi Eckhouse, right, who transfers. Like, this was a program that before that was strong, since they've come up from D2. And, like we said, gave New Mexico State a hard time last week. As far as everything for UMass, it's hard because there's a lot of people saying, this is what happens. You shouldn't have canned Don Brown. It's like, listen, Don Brown beat Central Connecticut by 4 points last year. All right. This could have been just this Bryant loss almost happened last year, the equivalent against the Blue Devils, right? It's maybe another year of Don Brown could have been a little bit different for the program, with maybe more resources, but it doesn't mean that he would have been some all-knowing guy that would have changed things, because this is systemic. This goes beyond coaching. This goes all the way to the top of the university as far as taking it serious for funding, taking it serious for investment, but it's hard because a lot of people,
not to cut you off, Ryan, but I wanted to ask you about this. And I know that UMass fans are frustrated, and rightfully so, and they've been frustrated for a long time. But the university spends $12 million a year on football. That's not a lot of money in comparison to what other programs invest in football, obviously. I think what's a sticking point for UMass fans is the fact that this school has $1 billion endowment. So is that the solution? Do you need to put another $8, $10, $12 million into this program? Because I think it is. I'm assuming you think it is. And I'm assuming that if you put that money into the program, you build a real indoor facility. You invest in McGuirk. If you put that money into the program, it'll yield a return. But then there's the other side of the coin here. What's to lead you to believe that it's going to yield a return? What has this program done since 2014 to either get Ryan Bamford or the UMass administration to believe that if we invest further in this program, it's going to be better?
Yeah, and John, that's the $1 million question. And every week, because I always want to be respectful of all the other great programs we cover. So I'm in my head like I almost want to do an emergency podcast sometime where we just dissect the program and bring in people, because it's like there's just so much, because like this is like I'm an alum and
we can
I
do
want
whatever we want. I own this thing, so
right.
Sure.
Yes, yeah,
we're in.
I love this school, the program. I'm an alum. All that's being said, but like you said, another $8 million. What does that do? I don't know. Does it help you pay players for NIL where you keep guys? I'm sure, but it's just, I don't know. Sometimes it's almost like there's this aura around McGuirk. Like do we just need a new stadium in general to? I don't know what it is, and this is going to sound maybe I might get a lot of flack for this, but like, is it worth it? I don't know, because like I'm a Massachusetts taxpayer. And if we have all this money within the state, I'd rather have some better bridges, better schools overall. Like there's a lot of other problems in the state of Massachusetts that are way more pressing for you, for your life and my life, John, than UMass football and trying to get them 6 wins to go to the Idaho Potato Bowl. You know what I mean? Like, and I know that's maybe a, controversial take, but I think I maybe think that way because it's like, what amount of money can make this a viable thing? I don't know, because we've seen an investment this year, and Harris Simiak's getting a lot of flack. There's a lot of roster turnover, and and I got some flack last week for saying, give patience. I still believe that, because what else are we supposed to do, John? Like, what else are we supposed to do? And you get rid of the athletic director. How does that make the program better tomorrow? Maybe it's next year. Maybe it's a few years.
It'd take a while if you did that.
Yeah, and that's just my thing. There's too much going on at the top. There's some donors who are very influential in decision making. Then there's some back scratching that happens here. There's some decisions that get made there that it's all screwed up, and it would take like an Alabama Birmingham situation where you cut the program and you take a few years off and you come back and you're like, all right, let's do this better. Almost like that's how it feels sometimes, where it's like, what the hell are we supposed to do?
But here's my thing with that though. You can't do that.
Of course, no, right? Of course,
no. And I'm not saying you're advocating for it per se. I just think before you even got to that point, I think you'd have to entertain going back to the FCS level. But I think here's the pickle you're in. You're in a conference now. And so there's no turning back here now. And not only are you in a conference in football, but football became the wagon that drove, if you will, the rest of the athletic department to the MAC. So, I mean, UMass basketball has not been what it was 20, 25 years ago. They're not necessarily that much better than the football program right now. The hockey program won a national title, which is awesome. But again, I mean, lacrosse is okay. But my point is you're not dominating in other sports. So if, let's say, you were to entertain cutting football, where are you making that money up? Because football is still generating enough money,
of course,
that it's worth keeping.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, John, there's like we talk about this for 5 minutes, and there'll still never be enough time to dissect like where it all. Why we're sitting here today, and it's not even the investment today. We're sitting here having this discussion because they made a mistake in 2010 by doing this in the first place. They poorly timed it. It was executed wrong by going to Gillette, and we're still paying for those sins, 15 years ago. And there hasn't been an ability to kind of work our way out of it. It's like the idea, like the days of Mark Whipple winning 4 games feel like ages ago, where I actually back then genuinely used to think there was progress. I'm like, okay, well, our teams are competitive. We're in these games. Like it has been, 6-7 years since it's felt like that. And that's what I think is the hardest part. And it's just like I said, we need to have like a deep dive either sometime, because I always feel bad, if you're a UNH fan, you're like, hey, we had a hell of a win on Saturday. I don't care what happened at McGurk,
and like that game next. So
right. And of course, even for Bryant, like it's funny. I kind of wrote up the story. I was ready to go from the UMass perspective, then flipped it on its head. I was thrilled to get down to the field and talk to Bryant. I was thrilled for them. Like, I thought that was amazing. They played excellent. Brennan Meyer was awesome. Apologies again to Coach Merritt he wanted to go celebrate with his team. I was like, can I get you for 1 minute? And I also said Coley instead of Soley for the kicker's last name. I felt like a goof, so like, that's who this should be about. I'm tired of UMass taking the spotlight away in this region from other programs for their incompetence.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and like I said, to start this part of the conversation, we have an obligation to cover all 17 D1 programs in the region. It's what we can cover right now. Obviously, we wish we could do more with D2 and 3 collegiately. But at the end of the day, I'm happy for Bryant. I'm happy for Coach Merritt. I know that program well. I've covered that program for years. I know how much time he and his staff have put into getting the program to this place. I couldn't be happier for them. Hopefully, it serves as a springboard for them, and they have a successful season. And for UMass, you feel for Coach Harris-Simiak and this first-year staff, because it's a good staff. He's a good coach. He's got a good staff. Mike Bajakian is a terrific offensive coach. Bottom line is, I think the way to fix this, and we're going to talk about this every single week, but I think one of the ways you could fix this is, yes, you could put more money into this thing, but it's going to have to be on the NIL player payment side of things. Ultimately, you got to figure out a way to make this program appealing enough to get better players. The problem is, in order to get the better players, you've got to upgrade the facilities. You've got to build an indoor. You've got to upgrade McGurk. And we're going to talk about this every week, and we're going to say the same shit. Until they do that, nothing's going to change. Because even though NIL is dominating the college landscape, and even though players want to get paid, they still want to go play somewhere where, A, they feel like they're playing big-time college ball and the facilities reflect that, and B, they're playing for staff that can get them ready to play in the NFL. So at the end of the day, if they don't feel they're getting that at a place like UMass, they're not going to go there. You mentioned UNH picking up a big 19-16 win for Holy Cross. First of all, I said this to you last week. When it comes to UNH, the beat goes on, okay? You graduate a lot of talent, especially on defense. Doesn't matter. Matt Vezza didn't even play that well last week.
No, he didn't.
Found a way. They cobbled together enough offense. Defense played well enough, especially in the second half, and they were able to pull it off. Conversely, you also feel bad for Dan Curran's Crusaders because they could very easily be 2-0. They could have very easily beaten Northern Illinois, and they could have very easily won this game. Their defense has played well. Problem for Holy Cross is the offense has struggled. You haven't been able to get Jaden Clairvaux going. But nonetheless, this is a big win for UNH. And for me, I mean, again, when you look at this program right now and where it's at, they go to Ball State this week. This is a program that they're going to be in the mix in the CAA from start to finish. And when the dust settles, don't be surprised if they at least win a share of the CAA or get another at-large bid.
Yeah, it's just impressive what, like we said, we've talked about this over and over, what they're able to do and try and, you lose a guy, but they plug right away. And, that's a full credit to Coach Santos. And I think you hit on the head. We said this last week about Coach Curran, how many of these games did he have last year? And it's another one just like this, right? It was a close game last year against UNH. So I feel for him and his staff because, they made up for it in Patriot League time. But these are the games that, you want to see. You want to start winning because in full credit to Holy Cross for taking on so many of these teams week after week. I can't help but think that whoever's going to be scheduling them in 3-4 years is not going to keep lining up Harvard, UNH, URI every week, when they're not playing Patriot League. Because it's like, you win and it's amazing. You lose and it's like, damn, But, and again, full credit to Nick Reed too. 4 field goals, right? It was a field goal fest, right? But it was exciting at the same time. And, to do it under the lights at home to start the season, is pretty exciting.
No, I agree with you. And of course, as I mentioned, UNH goes on the road this week to take on Ball State, MAC opponent. Holy Cross has their home opener at Fitton Field against URI. No rest for the weary. Speaking of URI, they picked up a 31-17 win over Stony Brook on the road. Nice win for Jim Fleming's Rams. Devin Farrell played well once again, a couple of touchdown passes, threw for over 300 yards. Antoine Littleton Littleton Jr., another big game for him, over 100 yards rushing again. Man, this Rams offense is rolling. URI is playing really good football. They're up to 5th in the country now in the latest FCS top 25 poll. This program, they're number 1 in our New England Division I poll this week. This program is really now at a place where Jim Fleming and his staff have this thing cooking right now.
Yeah, and again, like you were saying with Antoine Littleton Jr., to get the running game going, something that they really struggled with last year, to win this game on the road and start off, especially kind of coming off a bumpy win against Campbell is huge. And another huge test this week, but if they can pass it, I mean, holding down that slot in the top 10 is massive for the program. It puts a big target on your back the rest of the season, but it's one that I think Coach Fleming's team is ready for.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like we said last week, you have a lot of key pieces from last year's CAA championship team that are back this year. Maine is another one of those programs that could easily be 1-1. I don't know if I want to say 2-0 because that Liberty game was 7-7 going into the 4th, and then Liberty pulled away. But they deserved better last week in a 28-27 loss to William and Mary. Like I said, they could easily be 1-0. They return home for their home opener this weekend up in Orono against Stonehill. But Jordan Stevens' squad, I think, is going to get better as the season goes on.
Yeah, that's it. This is, man, I almost want to call this the moral victory podcast, but it's like, to lose by 1 against a good William and Mary team and not get blown out and to be within a point and really have a chance at winning, if not for that 4th quarter, is impressive. And especially when Carter Peavy ran the ball quite well, but did not have a good game throwing the ball. So
no, and I think he needs to play better for them.
Yeah,
they're going to be better when he's better at throwing the football. I don't think he's throwing the ball as well as he could.
No, I mean, to finish with 97 yards, under 50% completion percentage, is tough when you're trying. You need to be better to beat those William and Marys, to be in that middle of the pack CAA where you're actually competing. And we're not sitting here talking about, oh, is Maine going to finish 500? You want to finish 7-5, 8-4. These are the games you got to win and play a little better. So I do think that they are showing talent. This is way better of a start than last year, I think, in where they can go. I think their ceiling is higher, as we've seen these first 2 weeks at least.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, they have a winnable game this week. Stonehill's better. Yeah. They're better than they were last year. They could have beaten Sacred Heart week 1. Hung in there for a little bit last week against Lafayette and ended up losing 42-26. They're going to be better. They're not going to be a walk in the park by any means, but you would think that if Maine comes to play this week, they'll be heavily favored and they're well positioned to potentially pick up their first win. Looking at the FCS independent schools, speaking of Sacred Heart, they lose 28-10 to Lehigh. It's just the same old story with the Pioneers. They're going to play good defense. Again, people will say, well, when you give up 28 points, you're not playing good defense. They're going to play good defense, but one of the issues for Mark Knopfrey's squad in recent years, Ryan, has been their inability to score points. They can't score points. They can't run the ball effectively. At least they were doing that fairly well a couple of years ago, but they can't really run the ball effectively. They can't throw the ball. I don't ever really remember this program throwing the ball well since we've covered them. It's one of those things where it's like they're going to be in the mix, they're going to compete, but they're just not good enough to beat the better opponents on their schedule. And this is a year for this program, in my opinion. You need to make hay this year because next year you go into the CAA. You've got to be in a place from a competition standpoint where you can compete because as we saw last year with Bryant, it's a long, hard season if you don't go into it with a program that at least has a shot at being competitive in a lot of their conference games.
Yeah, it's to have 107 passing yards in 70 rushing yards. It's just like you said. They're up to what now? 22 points in 2 weeks. It's not acceptable to be able to take this level of football and expect that it's going to translate to the CAA because at least with Bryant, we saw a lot more with Bryant before they joined the CAA, right? On both sides of the ball, but especially offensively, that they were able to really move the football, and we're not seeing that with Sacred Heart. And it's been years since they've had at least a solid running game, even that's consistent. And I think that it's definitely worrying, but they do hang in there. They do always give themselves a chance to win, right? Like they hung in this game in the first quarter, then things get out of hand. They played well in the second half. They just could not score, right? And that's what maybe things will get better. There's a lot of investment coming into that program, right? Which is important. They're in a pretty good recruiting area.
They're going to have to put that investment in that facility, which will help them with recruiting,
right?
But that's not an FCS high-end FCS caliber facility now.
No, right now it looks like a high school field, right? They need to do something with it to make it a little better, and I think they are. They're slowly doing that, but it's maybe that will help as you start to make that jump kind of up more, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, they got a tough one this week. They traveled to Long Island to take on the Sharks. Long Island, of course, upsetting Eastern Michigan last week, 28-23. A week after they got destroyed by Florida down at the Swamp. They beat a team that's been one of the better teams in the MAC the last couple of years. So big win for those guys. This is going to be a tough task for Sacred Heart. Merrimack beating St. A's 31-6. Aiden Pereira had another big game as a dual threat quarterback for the Warriors. They go down to Kennesaw State this week. And again, we've seen it the last couple of years with Mike Ginetti's squad. They play these FBS schools pretty tough. Kennesaw State's a newbie to the FBS level. This should be a pretty good game.
Yeah, it's really hard to judge Merrimack when we know the type of players that they have and the guys that are on this team, but we don't know, how they stack up just because of not being in that conference. You're not, to be able to know like, oh, well, they compare to this, that. But I mean, if Aiden Pereira plays well, I think they definitely have a chance, especially with Kennesaw State being a newbie. And I thought that they looked really solid last week. They had that takeaway at the end of the game, with their defense really making life hell for St. A's. And so, yeah, I think that they'll definitely have a chance this weekend, but it's hard to tell with them week to week.
Yeah, it is. But they'll have a chance this week. It'll be a tough game. But, again, we saw it last year, right? Defensively, they're going to play well enough to to keep the team in it. If Aiden Pereira and the offense plays well, they'll have a shot. You are watching the College Football Preview Show presented by Yolked. I'm your host, John Sarianides. As always, I'm joined by my partner, Ryan Barry. Visit yolked.com today for more information on one of the best protein powder products on the market at only 47 calories. Tastes like birthday cake. It is a fantastic product. Again, visit yolked.com today for more information. Real quick, and I just take a look at the week that was in the NEC. We mentioned Stonehill losing 42-26 rather to Lafayette. Offense came to life. The defense just couldn't hang in there. They fell behind early. Offense made a late push, but it wasn't enough. As we mentioned earlier, the Skyhawks hit the road this week up to Orono, Maine to take on the Black Bears. Central Connecticut State defeated AIC last week 34-7. Big game this week for the Blue Devils as they host St. Francis at home. They were without Elijah Howard last week, and it appears they're going to be without him for a little bit here. And Mercyhurst putting it on New Haven 48-14. Chargers, after a competitive game against Marist the week before, thoroughly getting outclassed in this one. Mark Powell and his staff having to go back to the drawing board. Doesn't get any easier for the Chargers this week. They head up to Albany to take on the Great Danes, who play out of the CAA. That's the toughest game on the schedule for New Haven. It comes at a time where it's not ideal. Of course, they're going to have their home opener, I should say, the week after when Saginaw Valley State comes to town. Tough loss, though, for the Chargers. They now fall to 0-2.
Yeah, I think I actually picked New Haven because I'm like, they'll beat one of these FCS schools to start the year, but I think there's gonna be some rough goings early on, and that's okay. That's to be expected. I mean, if you get blown out, that's okay. But if you can try and keep it close, at least in the first half, and kind of start building some rapport, that's really all you can ask for, I think, at this point. But especially taking on an Albany team that's typically one of the better teams in the CAA. I do know that they're kind of projected to have a more down year this year, but still, this I think, like you said, will be their toughest game of the season.
Yeah, and of course the Ivy League hasn't started yet. This is the last weekend we'll have without Ivy League football. They kick off next weekend. Harvard is at Stetson. Yale hosts Holy Cross. Dartmouth hosts UNH in a battle for the Granite Bowl. And Brown travels down to Georgetown to take on the Hoyas. So the Ivy League kicks off next weekend. This is our last weekend without Ivy League football here during the regular season. And, of course, don't forget, the Ivy League can now qualify for the FCS playoffs, so that's pretty cool as well. Are you ready to look at the games that are on tap for this week, Mr. Barry?
Let's do it. Let's do a few
Mr.
picks.
Barry, are you ready, Mr. Barry? All right, first up, of course, we have the Boston College Eagles. They hit the road to take on Stanford. That game's going to be on at 10:30 at night on Saturday night. Our Kevin Stone, if you think he's a curmudgeon during the day, he's going to be even worse Sunday morning when he's on about 3 hours of sleep after covering the game from home and then writing about it. The Eagles, as far as a line is concerned, they're favored by 13.5, as they should. Stanford sucks. They got dog-walked last week by BYU after getting mucked the week before. That program's down in the dumps right now. Andrew Luck is in charge of running the program. Frank Reich is their interim coach. Clearly, he still thinks he's in the NFL. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing. BC should handle business in this one, right? I mean, 13.5. I'm putting the money on this one. I like the Eagles as a road fave. I see them winning by 2 touchdowns here.
Yeah, I think it could be close to the start, but I do think that they'll, just that maybe that slog heading out west. But I'll give the Cardinals that respect. But I'm going BC and to cover, and maybe they'll get that program right in Stanford. I don't know. They should be better, but I think being in the ACC is not going to help them. So
no, Stanford was a really good program in the Pac-12 for a long time under David Shaw. Shaw leaves, just hasn't been the same. It wasn't really the same the last few years of his tenure as well. I don't see that changing. UConn hits the road to take on the Delaware Blue Hens. Delaware coming off a blowout loss to San Diego State. The Huskies are favored by 9.5 in this one. Delaware, of course, is in their first year as an FBS program. This is a tricky spot for me. Ryan Carty is a good coach, and that Delaware program Obviously, we know the level of success they've had at the FCS level. We expect that there'll be some bumps in the road in their first year as an FBS program. Is UConn coming off a loss in a game they should have won? We talked about that earlier. Is 9.5 too much here?
It feels John, it feels like a lot, but I think that they're going to cover it and probably win like 27-10. That's what it's one of those where it's going to feel weird. It might be a little bit close, but then I think that they'll pull away, and I don't know. But like you said, just knowing who Delaware is and it's at home, I just think that the fact that the Huskies lost, I think they're going to be pissed. I think they're going to want to take it out on somebody, and I think the Blue Hens are going to be the ones that are on the other end of that.
Look, everybody that knows me knows that I love UConn. I love this program. I'm a fan of the program. I drink the Kool-Aid. And Stone typically jocks Boston College, and I jock UConn. I think that the Huskies are going to win this game, but I don't like that 9.5. I could see this being a 7-point win for them. I could be wrong. Watch, I'll end up winning by 10 or 14. And I'll look like an arsehole, but I think at the end of the day, 9.5 scares me here. Like I said, I think this Delaware program is pretty well coached. And what's UConn's psyche going to be after losing that game last week? That was a tough loss, man. And I'm not saying they can't bounce back from it, but that was a really tough loss. What's their mental state going to be after that one? I don't know. All right, the alma mater is on the road. Going to Iowa. They're going to Iowa City to take on the Hawkeyes. Hawkeyes coming off a loss in the rivalry game against Iowa State last week. What the hell do they call that trophy? I think it's like the Cyhawk Trophy.
Cyhawk, yeah. Cyhawk, yeah.
Yes, the Cyhawk Trophy.
Yeah.
Well, the Cyhawk Trophy is in Ames, Iowa. Unfortunately for the Hawkeyes, they couldn't bring it back to Iowa City. Iowa's favored in this one, I believe, it's 35.5. Hear me out here. I think Iowa's going to win this game. 35.5, though, is a bit rich for an offense that has not been good. Iowa under Kurt Ferentz, especially the last few years, has not been good offensively. I'm not sure that they're gonna outscore UMass by 35.5 points. I don't see it. I like Iowa winning by 21 to 28 points, but if I'm putting the money on this one, I'm putting it on the Minutemen.
Yeah, First of all, I think it's funny that you say that, Stone, stands for BC, you stand for UConn. I'm kind of like, I kind of have an overgrowth. You
stand for losing.
I have an overgrowth on the back of my neck, and that's UMass. Yeah, that's my version. I agree with you, but I do think a true sign of the program being where it is if the Hawkeyes cover and if they throw for more than like 200 passing yards, because they don't do that against anybody. But I just have a feeling that would be the team. But I don't know. I mean, obviously Iowa here, but and hopefully not the cover. But they're going to be UMass going to be out a lot of guys this weekend, and which is probably for the best. Get them healthy, then you have a bye week, and then you have Mizzou. Just do what you have to do to get healthy and just take a break. Which is the only way I could see 35 covering. But
they scored 34 in week 1 in a 34-7 win over Albany, and they scored 13 points last week in a 16-13 loss to Iowa State. No chance on earth that vanilla ass offense, even with the UMass guys sitting out, no chance on earth that they win.
If they do cover though, and don't have the same outcome as Albany, John, what are we doing here?
Well, if Iowa covers, two things are going to happen here. One, it's another bad sign for UMass, and two, I'm going to have to eat the crap sandwich.
All right.
I was wrong. Yeah. And look, folks,
Sure.
I don't mind being wrong. I just don't. People are wrong in life. It happens. We're not always on the right side of things. I just don't see, even with the guys that are out, and I think it's smart with what Coach Harris Simiak and the staff are doing here. Even with the guys that are out, this Iowa offense blows. I just don't see them winning by 35.5 points. In a week from now, and 7 days later, like SpongeBob.
Like SpongeBob, yeah.
7 days later. Oh, well, UMass losing to Iowa 55-7. Like, yeah, that's probably going to happen. All right, next up we have URI at Holy Cross. DraftKings doesn't have lines up on this one. They usually do FCS lines. Friday or Saturday. Stone, who's a degenerate gambler, he usually finds those lines.
It's a few of them,
yeah. Yeah. I'm not that guy. Stone is about 10 years away from being the guy that goes to your local convenience store and stares at the Keno board for 4 hours. He's about 10 years away from that. So,
wow.
Yeah, that ain't me. Nonetheless, URI at Holy Cross. I know last year we used to do the imaginary lines. Then I realized how stupid that was, so we're not going to do that anymore.
You're pretty accurate on a lot, though. Yeah,
I know, but it was lame.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that it was lame.
I mean, I think it's cool. Yeah.
I think it's cool, but even if DraftKings puts lines out for this game, which they very well could be on there, it shows you how little research we do for this thing. Also shows you how much we know because we could just do this thing on the fly. But I maybe we'll bring him back next week. How about that?
Yeah, whenever and whatever. I'm always down. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Shakira. All right. So URI at Holy Cross. Look, it's hard not to pick the Rams here, man. They're playing really well. The offense is clicking. 31 in week 1, 34 last week, and a 34-17 win against the Stony Brook program that was pretty good last year. Devin Farrell's playing at a high level right now. They can run the ball. They can throw the ball. Marquise Buchanan, one of the best wide receivers in FCS football, I should say. Look, Dan Curran's got that program at a place where they're going to play hard, right? They're going to play hard. But the big plays, the explosive plays, for Holy Cross, they're just not there. The way they were when Bob Chesney was here, and you had Matt Sluka, and you had Jalen Coker, and you had Justin Shorter, and you had those guys, Purdy, Fuller. The big plays just haven't been there. And I think in order to beat this URI team, you got to make big plays. I'm going with the Rams, in which should be a good game. I think Holy Cross plays them tough at Fitton Field.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to go with the Rams as well. It's sometimes funny when I think, about, they're going to have the home field advantage. It's like URI is only like an hour and a half away from Worcester. They're not going super far, right? So I'm going to take
they'll get their breakfast in the bag, get up there, play the game, and then they'll get their Chick-fil-A after the game on the bus, and they'll go home.
Right, but I'm with you. I think that they're too explosive. We haven't seen that yet from Holy Cross, and until we do, I don't think we can. It's hard to feel good about them, assuredly going against a team like URI.
By the way, can we talk about that? How Chick-fil-A's become like the universal go-to meal for sports now.
It is weird, yeah.
It is. Like, honestly, my life is enveloped by Chick-fil-A, right? Like when I go cover the Patriots, if it's a practice and they're feeding the media, if they're not making it in-house, it's Chick-fil-A. Sometimes they might throw you a curveball and it's Papa Gino's, but it's Chick-fil-A. Every time I cover a college football game, after the game, you walk by the locker room, there's boxes of Chick-fil-A sitting there. It's like Chick-fil-A has become like the go-to meal for everything in sports now. When in doubt, get Chick-fil-A.
That's weird. I would assume that's weird to hear for the Patriots, because I know for UMass football, they do it. I saw the kids the other day when they were walking out of there. I'm always walking my car the same time they are leaving. Boxes of Chick-fil-A. UConn last year in their press box were catered by Chick-fil-A. I'm not complaining to have a mac and cheese bar was awesome. Oh yeah, it was.
Look, you're not going to get Chick-fil-A at the Patriots on a Sunday because they don't operate on a Sunday, but they're supplying food to everybody and their mother every other day of the week.
Right, but that's weird. But yeah, I guess I'm not complaining, but it is weird. Yeah,
you know what? We have Yolked, but if we didn't have Yolked, Chick-fil-A probably should sponsor this show. I mean, I would gladly wear an Eat More Chicken hat. Oh yeah. Yes. Well, I mean, we've given them enough advertising here. They probably should cut us a check anyway. Right. All right. Next up, we have New Hampshire at Ball State. Of course, the Wildcats are 2-0 on the season. Question is here, can they win this game? Is this a game that the Wildcats can go on the road and win? Now, I'm going to say yes. And the reason I'm going to say yes is because we saw Holy Cross almost beat Northern Illinois, which has been a better program in the MAC than Ball State. And we saw Merrimack almost beat Kent State. Now, Kent State sucks, but this is a game that I think that UNH can win. I mean, Ball State is 0-2, man. UNH can win this game. If they play well, defense has played well. Defense plays at a high level. Matt Vezza plays better. Why not? Why can't the Wildcats win this one? I mean, this is hard because I think
I don't want to be always doing this, but if this were a Max Brosmer led UNH team, I think I would outright pick the Wildcats. But I think just because this will be Ball State's first game against an opponent that they can that's closer to their level. They have a field goal through 2 weeks, but that's because they got killed by Purdue, they got killed by Auburn. I think this will be their first game where they'll feel okay, but they also might come in slacking. But this could be like a 17-13 game. Yes. That's like I do. Like
if Ball State wins, I think it'll play out the way the other two MAC games did with Merrimack and Holy Cross.
Right. I would be very surprised if this was a blowout. But I think if you're UNH, especially coming off the weeks you've been coming after, I mean, in where Ball State's at, this is a game that I think they absolutely could be looking at as a win.
Yeah. I'm going to go Ball State as well. I agree with you. I think it's going to be a close game, probably a 17-14, 20-17 kind of game. I think Ball State pulls it out, but I don't foresee a blowout here. I mean, again, we know this with UNH. I know they went down to Central Florida last year and lost big, but look, Ball State's not Central Florida.
No, yeah.
At the end of the day, you know what? What do we know? Ball State's known for what? Being David Letterman's alma mater. I mean, a couple of other things, I suppose, but I mean, UNH should be able to play him tough. Stonehill at Maine, how do you see that one playing out? I mean, again, I think if you're Maine, this game comes at the right time. You've played well enough where you deserve better. It'd be a nice win for them if they could get it here. I think that the Black Bears get it done here and pick up a much-needed win and get the offense going, get Carter Peavy going. I think Stonehill can keep this thing close for a half, but I think Maine's better, and ultimately they pull it out.
Yeah, this is one where it's a coin flip as far as who's going to be feeling better about themselves after the game. If Stonehill comes out and gives them a close game and only loses by like a touchdown, 10 points, I think they're going to feel really good. But this is one where I think that Maine needs to come out, win this by at least 14 points, and feel good about themselves throughout the whole game. So I'm picking Maine as well, but it can't be close if you're Maine. This is your first real test at home against an opponent that you feel good about. This needs to be a big Carter Peavy game, right? And that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and if you're Stonehill, right? I mean, yes, you'd love to win it. But if you're Eli Gardner and his staff, again, I know that this seems to be the moral victory show because that's all we ever talk about is effing moral victories. But I mean, I think if you're Stonehill, again, if let's say you lose this thing by 7 or 10 points, if you're Eli Gardner and your staff, you got to take that.
Right. Yeah.
Because that means your guys played well enough to win.
Right. Yeah. And then that is just the confidence you need as you get into confidence you need as you get into conference schedule.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Looking at the FCS Independence, Sacred Heart at Long Island, as we mentioned earlier, Sharks upsetting Eastern Michigan last week. Sacred Heart can't score, plain and simple. They don't play well enough on offense to win a game like this. I like Long Island by 7 to 10 points. I think the Pioneers defense will keep them in it, but we haven't seen anything from this offense to suggest that they're going to play well enough to go down to Long Island and win this game.
Yeah, maybe they come out a little bit sluggish, the Sharks, that is, after such a, emphatic win last week. But, I think they'll roll, and I think this will be another wake-up call for the Pios.
And remember now, this is a CAA opponent. I mean, they're going to be playing each other more down the road. So you want a good showing. But, again, we haven't seen enough from this offense. We haven't seen anything to suggest that this offense is good enough for them to go on the road and win a game like this. Merrimack at Kennesaw State, like we said earlier, we think the Warriors can go down there and play in this one.
Yeah,
they are going to play in it. What I should have said.
Hopefully.
Yeah. What I should have said is they're going to go down, and we think they're going to go down and be competitive.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Warriors because I'll tell you, I don't know a lot about Kennesaw State, but I do know that Merrimack is competitive enough to win a game like this, especially for how well they played against Kent State, how great they looked last week against St. A. So I'm going to take the Warriors here, especially with Kennesaw State being kind of one of those recent kind of transitional programs.
Well, young Ryan Barry, let me educate you a little bit on Kennesaw State.
Please do, because I only know them as the school that Al Skinner, the former BC basketball coach, went to and won like 2 games in a year. So that's all I know about them.
So Kennesaw State is coming off a 56-9 loss to Indiana last week. So now if you're a Merrimack fan, you're saying to yourself, ooh, this is a game that they could potentially win on the road. To quote the great Lee Corso, not so fast, my friends. They only lost to Wake Forest 10-9 in week 1. They could have upset Wake Forest. Now, Wake Forest has not been as good. Dave Clawson is gone. That program is not what it was in recent years. But nonetheless, they're 0-2, and this is a game that, dare I say, given how well Merrimack has played on the road against FBS competition, this could be a game that the Warriors could win.
Yeah, I think that they're playing with house money, because I think that is the only benefit to the no conference thing is it's like, well, hey, we're not playing to be ranked right now. I mean, we're not playing for a conference crown. We're just looking to win games, so they can play this well. I saying all this, I do think Kennesaw State is playing with a little more desperation, and we'll probably get that win. But I don't know. I do think that Merrimack has a good chance from what we've seen thus far. But this is a tough one.
By the way, I had an idiot moment earlier. Long Island is not in the CAA. They're in the NEC.
Oh, right, yeah. But they feel like one of those teams that will eventually go to CAA as they continue to collapse.
So too, because the CAA is ultimately going to become a Northeast Mid-Atlantic conference. They're more than likely not going to be south of New Jersey at some point.
Right.
Nonetheless, they're in the NEC, not the CAA. It's 10:30 at night. Forgive me, I'm on my second show. I went to a football practice, worked all day. And just cut me some slack, will you?
Oh, do what we can. Yeah.
All right. St. Francis, Central Connecticut State. Of course, Blue Devils beating Almost College last week, 34-7. I couldn't resist. It's what people call AIC. I think it's an unfair moniker, but nonetheless, that's what they call the school. St. Francis 0-2. What is St. Francis, by the way? Are they still they're the Flashes, correct?
Yeah, the Red Flash. I've got my other monitor here. The Red Flash. Yeah.
The Red Flashes. I like the Blue Devils here. I think they bounced back last week. Brady Olson played pretty well. Don't have an update on Elijah Howard, so we don't really know his status. But for me, this is a big NEC game, even though the Red Flashes come in at 0-2. Give me the Blue Devils here. I think they take care of business, improve to 2-1 on the season.
Yeah, this would be a really difficult loss for them in conference play, especially since St. Francis have been really good in the past, not really looking as strong this year. So give me the Blue Devils, but this would be a really tough one to be like, oh crap, wait, what kind of season is this going to be? Because, are we going to be a 500 team, or are we going to compete again for that NEC crown? So, but give me the Blue Devils with a side of caution, especially with Elijah Howard's status.
Yeah. And, of course, as we mentioned earlier, New Haven traveling to Albany. Albany is 0-2 on the season, as are the Chargers. In case you're wondering, New Haven fans, Albany's first 2 games were Iowa, where they lost 34-7. And then they lost to Deshaun Jackson and Delaware State last week, 37-32. Albany's in the CAA, man. No disrespect to Deshaun Jackson and his program. That's a bad loss.
That's a very bad loss. I mean, it's, again, like you said, all due respect, but those are the ones the CAA should be winning. Those are that's what's supposed to make you the CAA versus those other schools, especially a school like Albany, who's been very strong in the past, 10, 15 years, it feels like. So, I mean, give me the Great Danes here, but this would surprise me to think, if I looked at the Chargers schedule coming into the season, and I'd think, they're going to probably beat Mercyhurst but lose to Albany. But if they beat Albany and other way around, I'd be very surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll play tough. I do think Albany is better ultimately, and I think that's the difference. Not much better. I can see this being a close game, a 7 to 10 point game, but this is part of the growing pains, right? We've talked about this. This is part of the growing pains of making that move up to the Division I level. I mean, that first year is hard. It's really hard because, and especially when you're a program that made the move late like they did, and not only did they make the move late, but then they had to turn their roster over. You had the coaching change. That's not easy to do. When Stonehill did it 3 years ago, Eli Gardner had been the head coach for a while.
Right.
They didn't have a lot of roster turnover. They were able to make the transition and be competitive. It's going to be hard for this New Haven team to be competitive given the timing of everything and then the turnover that they've had, both in terms of their players and their coaches. Did we miss any?
I think we got them all.
I think we got them all as well. All right, final thoughts here, Mr. Barry. before we put a bow on this bad boy and call it a night?
Not too many. I just, it already feels weird. We're at I almost said season 3, but week 3, and I don't want football to go by too fast. So I really want to just take my time and enjoy games. It will be nice to not have a UMass game to go to this weekend and can just, watch football.
We did miss one.
We did. Oh.
Bentley at Bryant.
Oh, Bentley at Bryant. Oh, apologies, Falcons and Bulldogs fans.
Yeah, well, some Bulldogs fans out there are going to think you did this on purpose as a disgruntled UMass guy. But here's what I will say in your defense. You're not the one hosting the show. I effed up. That's on me. It's my fault. So,
well, I mean, I'll take Bryant over.
And we're both going to pick Bryant.
Yes. Yeah, I think maybe that's why.
But I'm going to caution you here, though. The one thing I will say, 2 things. One, Bentley's going to be well coached. CJ Scarpa's a good coach, good staff, talented program. 2, let's not forget last year, and I know it was last year, but Bryant struggled with Franklin Pierce at home. So I think they win, but this could be a tighter game than you think. I'm not calling for a letdown here. I think Chris Merritt's going to have the troops focused. But Franklin Pierce played them tough last year, and I could see Bentley playing them tough this year.
It also only feels like a matter of time, too, before a school like Bentley makes the jump, to an NEC maybe. I don't know.
We've been saying that. Well, I think a lot of it will depend on whether or not the NEC exists.
Yeah, true.
It's like Merrimack in many ways is the one that holds the key to a lot of this. What do they do conference-wise? They're Division I. Do they eventually go to the CAA? They're saying that they're not, but I don't buy it. I think that what they're doing is they're buying time to see if they can line up finances to add to their facility, to perhaps add to Duane Stadium. Like I still see them in the CAA at some point. And I think what's going to end up happening is some of these schools that are in the NEC right now, you may end up seeing a new conference born out of all of this. But could I see Bentley eventually making the jump? Sure, but there's another program, though, that if you're going to make the jump, the facilities have to reflect that, man.
Yeah.
You can't make the jump without the facilities. You just can't. I say it all the time, Ryan. You want to be good in football, you got to spend money. If you don't want to be good in football, then don't spend the money. Play at a lower level, offer the sport, and that's it. Go non-scally and call it a day. But if you want to be good at it, you have to put money into it. I mean, there's no other way around it. So,
yeah. It may not be worth it.
Yeah. I know our viewers are sick of it, but I'm going to ask you anyway. One final UMass thought, because I know there's a lot on your chest that you're trying to get out.
Oh. Anything else to say about them, or you have one more?
Do you have another? We just had our awkward moment of the show.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
Our awkward moment of the show brought to you by.
Yeah.
In summation, I know that you've had a lot that you wanted to say about UMass this week, and I know that the UMass faithful are saying a lot of things that are getting your attention.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because I went on that Twitter X Spaces, whatever the heck it is, after the fact, and listened to a lot of impassioned people talk, and I think it's just sad, right? And because I went to the Hall of Fame ceremony on Saturday, which was awesome, appreciated the opportunity from the university, from yourselves to go to that and ask a couple of questions of Victor Cruz and just see what that was. And I just, all I know about UMass is how great it was before I got there. I do know how great hockey's been since I got there in 2012, but all I hear is how great basketball and especially football was. And it's just like, it feels like a foregone time that is eons ago that I don't even know how you even capture that to replicate it today. And it's just, because it really does. Saturday's loss just really felt like you're like, what the hell? Because they were in the game. They were up 10-7. Like they just didn't they had chances to put it away, but they just didn't. Like that's what people aren't even talking about the game. They're talking about UMass and the program, but it's like, there was a hold that was missed in a red zone trip. Ironically enough, Derek Morris kicks that 53-yarder, best in school history. But if he hits the extra point earlier in the game, that's actually a tie ball game and it's going to overtime. It's just, these are the little things that you're literally like, it's Sideshow Bob stepping on a rake in The Simpsons every single week, and it's like, when are we just who is going to finally move that rake out of the way? And it's just, I think people are just tired of stepping on the rake, John. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. Well,
so
But I will say this. I will leave you with this, and I know we do need to wrap it up here. I hope that 0-12 I don't want to call it a prognostication, but that 0-12 tidbit that you put out there earlier, I'm hoping that doesn't come to fruition. I still think that Akron sucks. Kent State blows.
Right.
They have a couple of games on the slate that they could win. I still think they have a shot. And I'm not convinced come Thanksgiving week, Bowling Green has to come out here for a Tuesday night action game. I'm not convinced that we don't have a potential dub there as well. Ryan,
Right.
great stuff as always, my friend.
You as well.
Appreciate it. We'll be back with you again next week to recap week 3, look ahead to week 4. That'll do it for this week's episode of the College Football Preview Show. For Ryan Barry, I'm John Sarianides. We will be back with you until next week. Till then, get out there, watch the games. If not, watch them at home. Support our local college programs. Peace.